Scott Dochterman. Chad Leistikow. Together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to episode 55 of Legends and Listeners. Scott Dochterman, what a day, buddy. Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Both our heads are kind of spinning. I'm Chad Leistikow, the Des Moines Register. We just finished, at least I just finished writing for the newspaper. I had to file after a Kirk Ferentz suspension press conference, Scott. So lots to unpack this afternoon. We were going to record last night, and then we were on a little text message with Aiden, like, maybe we should wait until after the press conference. I'm glad we did because we got plenty to unpack today.
Yeah, I mean, I think even when I saw the press conference was coming up, Chad, I was like, okay, it's probably just, maybe Kirk Ferentz is going to revisit some few things. I figured questions 1 through 8 or 9 would be all quarterback related. And then later on in the night, we found out it might be a little bit more serious than that. And there were quarterback questions, but they were way down the list.
Well, we are coming to you live on this Thursday afternoon from the Channel Seed Studios, as always, here on the Iowa Everywhere Network. But things kind of really got kicked into gear last night, Scott. You broke the story on The Athletic. Great job by you about Kirk Ferentz being suspended. Not only Kirk Ferentz, but John Budmeyer, both out for the first game this season. We found out today that it was a self-imposed suspension. A lot of questions about that. That they're hoping that, the NCAA kind of, abides by that and goes along with that. Otherwise, you're just waiting for the, notice of allegations, all that stuff, right? And so you're trying to kind of get ahead of it. And Beth Goetz and Kirk Ferentz said today, that was their best course of action to self-impose a one-game penalty for, as you reported, and I was able to confirm as well. Cade McNamara is the source of this thing. They never mentioned his name. But the recruitment of Cade McNamara was at the root of this, nearly 2 years ago in late 2022. You get into it. Why don't you get into how you reported that?
Well, it's Chad. This is a topic that we're, both kind of familiar with, but this is one where Kirk got caught driving 80 on a 70, and there are guys around him going 85 and 90. But when you get caught, and you could try to say, they're doing this, but whataboutism just doesn't work here. It's, you got caught, you got the ticket, pay the fine, straddle the line, and then next time do a better job of not getting caught. I wrote my column here, Chad, on this, that, don't deter yourself from being aggressive. Still be as aggressive as possible and go right up to the line as you have before. You do not want to take the opposite route, which is we've got to be really careful here because everybody else is still being very aggressive. And I know I'm kind of going in a different direction than what you asked me here. But the other fact is, the Big Ten will start 10 different quarterbacks, or 10 teams will, that enter the portal this year. Everybody is very aggressive to get a quarterback. Continue to be aggressive to get a quarterback. The problem here is Iowa, A, didn't cover its tracks very well, and B, you got caught in advance. Next time, avoid that. But anyway, I know I went completely off script here, but
we don't have a script today. No script today. This is the least prepared I am for a show. I just knew we were going to do it, and I knew we'd have plenty to talk about. So yeah, this will be easy. But yeah, no, you. So I'll unpack kind of where I was coming from in my reporting, and then you can go with yours. This was I think I mentioned this on our Hawk Central show today. I got tipped off to this probably, I don't know, I want to say 3 weeks ago, maybe something like that. And it wasn't like from a high level source or anything like that. It was just like, oh, wow, that really, like, that's interesting. Like, I'll follow up on that. And when I saw the press conference announced, that was the first thing that clicked in my head. Oh man, maybe this actually is happening, because why would he call a press conference all of a sudden? Less than 24 hours notice. Checked into it. Well, most people hadn't heard any. Like, this was like news to them, like in positions that you would think would know. So it really was something that Kirk Ferentz had kept in a very tight circle. I mean, you think back to even the Lisa Bluter retirement, Scott. Like, when Beth Goetz is involved, it seems like the circles are very, very tight. So this information was not out there, and you kind of started to see it a little bit last night. I think the message boards caught a little wind of it late last night, and then I went to bed. You posted the story, and why don't you take us through? I don't know, whatever you want to take us through. It's just, I feel like it's an interesting world, because I would say I did not have what I would deem a full enough story to report early evening last night. I had what I thought was happening, but I wasn't 100% sure because I couldn't get the confirmation I needed. So that's kind of our world. We got to be right. Like, that's both of our worlds. You work for the New York Times now, basically, and I work for USA Today Network, and we got to be right. We can't be wrong. And so I applaud you for getting it out there. I think it was good to start the day with that conversation rather than waiting all day. So I'm glad you did it. I'm glad you got it out there, because I think it didn't leave everyone's imagination run wild until 1:30, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but it's also, there'd been a little bit of whispers, but I really didn't pay much attention to it. I thought if there were whispers before, it would somehow be loose lips and boom, 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 here it comes. And we didn't get any, and we didn't get a big type of alert that, hey, something's going to be happening here. At least I didn't.
No.
Maybe you did. I did not.
Nope.
But, and then, it started leaking out. I started checking around to a couple of people and got a fuller picture, obviously, of what this entailed. And then, late last night when I was putting it all together, I got back with Beth. I made sure to contact her just to, hey, tell her this is happening. We got this. Do you have any comment? And then she's like, I don't have any comment. And so, I had to run through like 3 to 4 different editors, New York Times /Athletic. This isn't just saying, it's the same thing for you with Gannett /USA Today /Des Moines Register, me with the Athletic /New York Times. I can't just say, I confirm this if you report something, or you can't just say, oh, I've confirmed your report. We have to go through editors and tell them who we get this for, do this from. And you have to do the same thing. We have a process. It's rigid. And there are stories that we know that have been spiked because of different things. So, but this is, or your second or your fifth, which feels like last, because you have to abide by this rigid policy. So, I had to involve all of them at a later hour, and, God, I don't even know what time we published it, but I can tell you this, Chad, because this type of process with this type of story where you feel like you're hanging out there a little bit, it's hard to sleep, because I get, I see the Twitter exploding, it's like, it's a wildfire. And then even though you're confident you're right, it's not until, well, first of all, I had a big relief when I saw that you confirmed it this morning, because then I felt like, okay, good. I didn't screw this up. You're going down with me, and then two, when it came to the press conference. And we're always confident in what we do, but it's also, it is, a little bit unsettling. You just want to make sure you're right. I don't care if I'm second or fifth. I just want to make sure I'm right. And at least this time around, I had the right information.
Yeah, well, good job by you. And just I had a lot of people asking about how this works, so I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Then, so hopefully that was helpful to you guys. Yeah, I have to, we have pretty strict policy at our very strict policy. I mean, I have to get sources approved by the top editor, and if she isn't around, it's next in command type of deal. And they definitely prefer at least 2. There have been occasions when we've gone with 1 if it's a super reliable, like rock solid type deal. But 2, and then I was able to at least get 3, by this morning. So I had 3, and so I felt good about it. And, it's not just, seeing someone's report and saying, yep, that's right. You got to, ideally going to check them because this is our reputation on the lines too.
Yeah.
So anyway, they never, so my point being is they've never said Cade McNamara. Obviously that is who is centered around. I'm trying, obviously Budmeyer isn't kind of ensnared in this, Scott. And it's, my hypothesis would be that he was the lead contact here. That's based on what Cade said in his podcast with Jordan Palmer last year or 2 years ago, I should say. Right. I mean, he said the old quarterback's coach at Wisconsin, he gave me my first Power 5 offer and, I know him pretty well and all this stuff. And it was, I don't know what they flagged exactly, but I had heard it was from a podcast that it got flagged. So I don't know if it was that one or the Vandenberg podcast. I listened to the Vandenberg's podcast. It wasn't much really incriminating in there. So I have to think it was probably stemming from way back in that initial interview, but don't know for sure.
It's kind of funny, a little ironic in some ways that the most guarded program for state secrets for so long, has gotten dinged twice in the same year by 2 athletes who for loose lips, and Caden Proctor and Cade McNamara. And it was kind of innocuous. Both of them were, but very well could have been the Jordan Palmer podcast. It's just, what is kind of strange here, Chad, is when we talk about the transfer portal and we talk about the issues related to it, we all know there's tampering going on. It is just, again, I equate it to, I don't know about 435 in Des Moines because it seems like everybody goes kind of slow there, but I'll say this on 380 from between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. If you're not going 70, if you're going 70, you're getting lapped. And this is kind of the same way it is when you're dealing with the transfer portal before it comes out. I mean, you got everything going pretty quickly. And if you're going 70, you're getting beat. And Iowa was going 80-ish, decided to cut off a cop or something and got pulled over and got dinged. And other people are going, ha, sucker. We went 90, and we got away with it. It's just now, I think in Iowa's case, got to continue to be aggressive, though. Don't let this slow you down. That's a different message, but
different message. Yeah. So much to unpack here, but I'll jump on that since you've said it twice now and kind of concur in the fact that I think Iowa fans are glad they're pushing the envelope here with Caden Proctor, with Cade McNamara. Now you wish Cade McNamara, had worked out better so far. Right now it's an expensive acquisition. You're losing 2 coaches for the opener, also losing a week of recruiting, off-campus recruiting, which also was part of the South Dakota punishment. Not insignificant.
No.
And we'll get into kind of the game day, the significance of Ferentz missing the opener. We'll get into that. But just as far as, all that goes, this is, I think people want them to be aggressive, and you're right. They need to. That's how the quarterback deal works. If you don't have somebody identified, you've just, like I said on KXNO, I was just on KXNO right before this. I was I think Iowa's bad at cheating. They're not using the back channels. Just use someone else's phone. I'm not saying you should cheat. I'm joking. But if you're going to go back channel, actually go back channel. Don't, don't use your university phone to send a text. And maybe, I have a feeling it was probably, I don't know this, but I have a feeling it was mostly Budmeyer contact. And I'm guessing Ferentz got looped in at some point and made a contact that he regrets. He said today, the first time I've committed a level 2 violation in 26 years, and it'll be the last. And he was very apologetic, Scott. I mean,
yes, he was.
That was the theme of my column. Was the tone was complete contrast from the gambling tone last year, exactly 12 months ago when he was on. Remember, he was on the practice field a year ago. 17 minutes of gambling talk coming off the field, and it was just blasting the NCAA, and it didn't stop. I mean, he was doing it on the Dolph show, on Wednesday nights throughout the season. Like,
yeah, right.
He took the NCAA to task for months on what he deemed was kind of a petty rule enforcement. Yes, Noah Shannon broke the rule, but come on, that was kind of his mentality. But that was completely 180 in this case. So that was kind of the theme of my column. I know it went a lot of roundabout there, but that's that was kind of the theme of the day to me. Apologetic, sincere, remorseful, wants to move on. And I think I don't know what you thought, Scott, but I really thought he was I thought he was a little bit like embarrassed, almost like ashamed a little bit, like that he put himself in this position.
You're exactly right. And I did kind of lead with the tone ranging from conciliatory to emotional. He accepted responsibility. He didn't try to blame anybody. Wouldn't do any good anyway. But, he owned it. He accepted it. And he's always been an accountable man. I mean, there are things that people could complain about Kirk, but he's always been accountable. He's always stood up, faced the adversity, faced the issues, and done so in strong fashion. And I think he was that way today. He knew about this a long time ago. And this was something that the timetable is a little tougher to grasp, because they do such a good job, now with Beth there of keeping things tight. But, and of course, this is kind of an embarrassing situation, as you said. I mean, this is not something you would expect from Kirk Ferentz. I remember last night, a prominent national writer retweeted and said, well, I didn't have Kirk Ferentz committing a violation on my bingo card, a recruiting violation, but there it is. And the bad at cheating is kind of funny when you think about it, because I was not known for that. But then also you look at how accidental this was, the uncovering of this. I mean, Cade and Proctor just, I was standing right in front of him face to face. And he was just like, yeah, well, Tyler sent me a text, just telling me to keep my head up. And that's just innocent, but impermissible contact. Mm-hmm. And then, then you look at, this situation. It was, in a podcast, it was laid back. It was just, hey, and it was talking about, the situation with his quarterback coach on a podcast, that's like totally accidental. It's not like, they were spotted sitting with Cade's dad at a, in Connor Stallions at a Michigan game, So, right. It's just crazy. But alas, here we are. And I do think Kirk stood up and, handled himself, acquitted himself the way that people magnanimously, the way I think people kind of view him.
So from the official press release, it says, the issue involved communications with a player and his family prior to him entering the transfer portal. So, obviously must have been Cade's parents or something like that also involved in the text thread. I was listening to you and Rob on the Hotspot podcast, and you had mentioned you didn't think Michigan had turned them in. That was a question that surfaced. Do you want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, I'd heard, and I wasn't able to report it because I just didn't think I had enough to report, but that it wasn't Michigan, but somehow somebody, floated that to the NCAA, and there were several people who were interviewed on Iowa's campus and stuff. And it just didn't seem like the Michigan was the one that had done it. And, and maybe one staffer said, hey, check this out, and maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't, because I did check with the NCAA, and they came back with a typical no comment. They're not going to talk about stuff on their investigation. But, in this situation, it just didn't seem like this wasn't, Bruce Pearl taping somebody, getting $75K in a blazer, I mean, this is right. It's nothing like that. If anything, maybe it was, maybe somebody there did something, but it wasn't like this whole scale, let's go get them type of thing.
Yeah, it just sounded like what it sounded like, just contact. Again, not trying to make light of it. Again, it's a violation for
Mhm.
sure. I mean, it's just like, I don't know if it's just like, but Jim Harbaugh had contact with recruits during the COVID, blackout period back in 2020, and that cost him 3 games. That he was defiant about it,
Yes.
which I think was part of the 3-gamer,
Mm.
but and denied it, and I think he's still denying it. I will not apologize. Right? He's still he's still not letting that one go. But
And
Kirk,
he didn't work with the NCAA at all on that either. So
yeah. So what? It was kind of interesting, Scott, to see him and Beth Goetz together up front. The last time we kind of saw them together, really, and I don't know if they were together, but was when the Brian Ferentz stuff came out, and it seemed like Kirk was a little bit more adversarial with Beth at that time. Late October, early November.
yeah.
It seemed to me that they were in lockstep here on very good terms. I have to imagine. I mean, I don't want to assume, but it just seems like Beth. I feel like Beth's leadership shined a little bit here. Again, take accountability, take your medicine. Let's be proactive on this. I think one of them used that term, proactive.
Mhm.
It felt like to me that maybe that Beth was somewhat leading the way here. I think it said Beth. The press release said, she recommended a self-imposed 1-game suspension. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on kind of that dynamic of Kirk and Beth kind of up there together for the first time since the Brian stuff?
Well, there was one other incident, and that's when they brought Lester and Seth. They elevated Seth. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
She was there with them,
Good
but
call.
the first time with just those two standing side by side, and they had a unified message. I think there seems to be a respect that Kirk has for her. And the last one was personal. I mean, the one with Brian, that's the hallmark to the whole nepotism situation, because you're protecting somebody other than what their job performance shows. And it's because it's personal, and you want to get away from the personal part of it, the family part of it. And I think with Beth, has she had a misstep? I don't know that she's had one, since she's taken over as interim AD or AD. I mean, I don't know of any AD who could have handled the situation with Lisa Bluter and Jan Jensen any better, because it was during a dead period. That Lisa said she wants to retire. Beth had, and I know we're going to a different area, but I mean, just the way she was able to navigate that, because had Lisa just come out and retired, then they had 4 or 5 days of lingering. They can't talk to their, recruits and stuff. And that could have been really difficult. And in this case, she navigated that well. She's handled just about everything else. I know they're in great shape when it comes to the future, paying athletes or whatever. She's saying all the right stuff. And in this situation, she seemed to strike the right tone. Kind of like, I've gotten in trouble at work before. I remember at the Gazette one time, I got in trouble for, bad things.
Oh boy, this sounds like a good tangent.
I had a couple, but let's say there was one where it was during that Duke Butler basketball game, the national championship, and my cable went out, and I tweeted out some bad words to my cable company, which is local, and I got in trouble for that. I understood that, so we've had bad moments, and you just know it, and I think that was the case here, that they knew what it was. Let's just take, as you said, take the medicine. Let's go. And I got that impression that they knew what was coming. Let's just get it out of the way. Let's get it done, and let's be professional. And Beth has been nothing but professional, and Kirk, of course, has been professional almost his entire career. So they seem to be on the same page. This is bad. This isn't something that they want to sugarcoat. Kirk owned it, took responsibility for it. And to spin it forward, you mentioned this. I think this could have a galvanizing effect for the fan base and for the team. Yeah. Not that they need a chip on their shoulder, but Iowa fans probably, some should look at it this way, like, you know what, our coach is fighting for us. I almost said a bad word.
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm going to
Another apology. Yeah.
I know. Now I'm going to have to get written up by the social media policy at the New York Times. But our coach is fighting for us.
Yeah.
He's actually going. He went a little bit over the line, but man, he's coming out and he's trying his best to do what he can for us. It's not just we don't want to enter the portal. No, he's not like that. And then likewise so the fans should feel like, hey, good about this. And then secondly, the team, that's a rallying cry right there. They've already got a chip on their shoulder, but this is a rallying cry. So I think this could galvanize the team a little bit, give them a little bit of a swagger, chip on the shoulder type of thing. And then the offense or the fan base, you know what? This guy's fighting for us. He's all right.
Obviously, speaking of taking your medicine, Game Day Men's Health is going to come through for you. One of the great things about Game Day Men's Health is that it's quick, it's routine, no obligation consultations, it's completely free. Check them out. Ankeny, West Des Moines, North Liberty. They can give your life a boost, a testosterone boost with testosterone replacement therapy. Is kind of the big thing they do, but they can help you with weight loss. All of this, relates to your energy, your sex drive, your muscle mass. Man, I just I've gotten to the point, Scott, where I kind of crave Mondays. Like, it's not like a drug necessarily, but it's like it is a drug. But
it is a drug.
But it's not like it's not like a fix or something. But it's just like you look forward to kind of that little, refresh every Monday. And so, I'm really having a great experience with Game Day Men's Health. You can catch them in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. The North Liberty office got plowed into, Scott, but still accessible, right?
Yeah, I had to go through the South North Liberty door, because the front door got crushed. And luckily for Corey, the manager or whatever who's there, he got hit. But he's okay. He's okay, but he said if he didn't jump up, he would have gotten just.
Oh my God.
It was pretty bad. Yeah. So no, they're great people. I love going there on Mondays. I went Tuesday this week because I was at Metallica on Saturday or Sunday night. So I had to postpone it a day, and probably for the best because I couldn't hear very well and my head hurt on Monday. But no, they're great. I totally recommend it. You feel that jolt. We need that jolt at our age, Chad. I mean, you're probably you're in better health than I am, and I'm sure it's adding to that, and then maybe it's helping me a little bit too along the way.
Well, that's good to hear. Lots more to get into with this Kirk Ferentz suspension here, Scott. Let's talk about the game itself. You mentioned the galvanizing effect, and that's something that I put in my column that posted. It's up at hawkcentral.com. Also talked about a little bit on our Hawk Central pod. Just how, first of all, the infrastructure is there for the game. Let's talk about the August 31st game. Ferentz had to have some idea, probably, that this might come up. Seth Wallace being the assistant head coach makes perfect sense. We've been over that. It could have been LeVar too, but Seth makes sense on a lot of levels. Kirk has said he's got those head coach qualities. And the great thing about this arrangement, Scott, is that you don't have to take a coordinator out of his role for this game. Seth is the assistant defensive coordinator, linebackers coach, as we know. But Phil, Gimpy Phil, will still be the defensive coordinator. An interesting first game for Tim Lester. That's going to be something to unpack next week. How is that going to work? If the quarterback struggles. And then, of course, LeVar Woods, in charge of the special teams. So it feels pretty seamless to me. Some unanswered questions so far, about how they'll handle the wide receivers rotation. I'm sure they'll have a firm plan by game day, but the sensible game day plan for Illinois State seems to be in place. Kirk will watch from home, it sounds like.
Yeah, I wondered where he's going to go, like Wig and Penn, or watching the dugout at Banks Field or something like that. But no, I think it's it all makes sense. I mean, this the whole scenario you laid out makes sense, because the last thing you would want is for your offensive coordinator in his first game to also have head coaching responsibilities. And that includes, some of the nuance of the game, like dealing with officials, to talking to, the ironing out third, fourth down situations, whatever. You want somebody separate for that. And, Phil is probably not suited for that role. Phil's suited for the role he's currently in. And, LeVar would be the other one that I think, even as a special teams coordinator, you could probably oversee the team a little bit differently. But that said, I think Seth is uniquely qualified. Seth will be a head coach in the next 5 years, whether it's at Iowa or somewhere else. He's good. He's got a plan. He handles himself well. It's going to be, and we'll all see that up close. Now, I caution anybody to think that all of a sudden, if they go out and let's say they score 45 points, that all of a sudden it's like, that's because Kirk's not there, I'm sure that's coming, isn't it, Chad? I think, but last year they won, I think it was against Western Michigan, oddly enough, like 41-10. So, I mean, they're going to, if that's 41-10 in this game, it's not because Kirk was out. Right. Now, if they start running the oop-de-oop like in Varsity Blues, then yeah. But I just I think the game will probably be almost seamless, in part because of the opponent.
Well, and this is a team with extreme veteran leadership. It's not like you're going into this without leadership. I mean, Jay Higgins, all the guys on the defensive side of the ball. And then you think about all the fifth-year seniors on the offensive line. Cade McNamara, I mean, I do think that is a valid a check in his box going into week one, that he has kind of the locker room right now, as opposed to Brendan Sullivan. We'll get to the QB1 announcement, which was made today as well, for all practical purposes. But like that, the game itself, Scott, doesn't, like how the game is handled doesn't worry me. Now, I'm not saying Illinois State's going to be a pushover, but I think the infrastructure is in place. Like I wouldn't worry much about Kirk Ferentz not being there for Illinois State, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I feel like, if they play poorly, it's not because he's not there, I don't think. In fact, you could get the opposite effect, win one for Kirk type of thing. And then the beauty of it is the following week, you face your rival, who's going to be very, hungry to win and a very good team. And now you've got Kirk's back. Like, that image to me, and I said this on our Hawk Central pod, that changes my impression of that game a little bit, because all of a sudden, I don't feel like it's as much pressure on Iowa. I feel like it's more, hey, Kirk's back. We're feeling good about ourselves right now. That, I feel like that vibe could really be coming. You just can picture him standing in front of that tunnel, the crowd, the players. I mean, they love Kirk. That could be a real powerful moment for that Iowa State game if things play out, in a positive way for the Hawkeyes.
You're right. The swagger that they're going to take for both games, I think it's a dynamic that it has to be organic, but you can see it happening, which is, on a week from, 9 days. God, it's only 9 days away. You're seeing win one for Kirk. He's not here, and rally around Seth. And you see that all the time where somebody's gone for whatever reason. Everybody kind of bunker mentality and feeling, and this defense will take it upon themselves to do what they've done pretty much the last 3 years, which is, kind of help the team usher in. And I mean, I could see it being like 38-3, that type of thing. But then once Kirk comes back for your in-state rival, there's going to be a cheer when he hits the field, and it's going to be loud, and the team is going to rally around that because they love him. I mean, when you look at Iowa, their departure numbers are better than everybody else's, which is something that when we go back to 2020 and the issue there, it could have been a floodgate situation. And instead, they have some of the least attrition on, except at wide receiver, but of any team in the Big Ten. And so that's, to me, what the hallmark is. They rally around him. They love him. That's probably why there wasn't a mutiny last year or the year before against the offense, because of the respect they had for Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah, well put. We'll see how this plays out on the field. I think more questions can be unpacked. The one I talked about just on KXNO, though, Scott, is what if Cade struggles? Like where I do want to get answers on that. I don't know if Kirk will give us any, but that decision's Kirk's to pull the quarterback. Okay. And he's not there. Seth Wallace going to pull Cade? Is Tim Lester going to pull Cade? Do they have orders from Kirk? Like if he's this, you can't pull him, or, wait till halftime at least. I don't know. It's an interesting thing because it's very possible that he struggles. Very possible, given the camp that he's had. Now I know they say he's improving, but what if it's not going good? I mean, it's going to be interesting who pulls that trigger if that happens. I don't think it'll come to that, but what do you think about that question? Like, how would that work? That's an interesting dynamic.
That's very German army-esque because they just didn't, they never deviated because they always had to take top-down leadership. And that is a very big, valid question as to, and what level of struggle are we talking? Like, he's got some rust. He's shaking the rust off, but he's, does he have 3 interceptions in the first half and he's late on every throw and he's not doing it the right way? I mean,
crowd's booing.
Yeah. I mean, at what point, what kind of what kind of validation do you give your coaches to make that call when you're not there? I mean, and that is a call that has always been very, very difficult for him to do anyway. As we've seen over the years. And so, you're not here. And then in the second quarter, Cade starts 1 for 5 with 2 interceptions. Well, we'll just pull him and put Sullivan in. And then next week we'll go back. How empowered do you allow your assistants to be to make that call? The other positions, 21 or 23 out of 24, anybody can do. But in this case,
right.
I imagine that it's like, you better be forced to justify it
right
the next day. And the other part is, will they have any, they're not allowed to have secret communication, but can you imagine that at halftime? It's like Kirk's texting or Mary's texting for Kirk.
Yeah. Mary's texting an honorary captain. That would be, that would be the workaround.
Right. So who'll be the honorary captain,
I don't,
Brian.
Right. Jeez. Oh man,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. But anyway, it is. I mean, if you're Seth Wallace, your head coaching debut, and I don't have an answer like who this win or loss will count for. I've read for Harbaugh, it'll count for Seth.
Yeah, I think it's Seth. Yeah, I don't think it counts for the team. But
well, obviously. But I read the Harbaugh stuff that the institution decides how they award that. So I'm curious. I asked that question. Don't have an answer yet, but it could impact Kirk's win count. Maybe, I don't know. But
it's kind of important.
Yeah, it is. I know he needs 10, right? 10 to pass Woody Hayes. So it is a factor. Don't have an answer completely on that yet. But I'm just saying, if it's your head coaching debut, which it is for Seth, like he's not going to go down with a quarterback that's struggling, right? He's going to want to make it. I don't know. It's an interesting spot to put that acting coach in. What would Kirk do? He'd probably stick with Cade, but you're not Kirk,
right?
So, and Lester's voice is interesting too. I'm not trying to manifest some struggles here or anything, but I'm just saying, like, you got to have a plan. At least you have to talk about this.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure they will. They overanalyze everything. I'd imagine that there's going to be some sort of a plan for this. It's like, what happens here? And then they're, Kirk, I didn't really thought about that. Let me think about that and leave it, with like an ellipses or something. But I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure what he's hoping for and everybody's hoping for is the other, which is what if he's like 14 of 14 passing?
Right.
Do you keep throwing the ball in the third quarter?
Yeah. Right.
You're up by 3, 4, 5 touchdowns or something like that. But
right.
I don't know. We got a whole week to write about this stuff, and hey, it gives you some juicy details, right? When you got to when you got to fill the paper every day.
Well, if I'm Seth, I would just kind of leave it up to Lester, honestly. Like, hey, these guys. If you get a feel, you've been a head coach.
Yeah.
You make the move, and I trust you to make that. That's probably how I would handle if I was Seth, but who knows?
Yeah.
Now, if you're Kirk Ferentz next Saturday, Scott, it might be a good idea to work. Plan ahead and get a bottle of Steeple Ridge bourbon.
Yeah, there you go. I was thinking of that
for the game. Steeple Ridge delivers a high-quality, delicious drinking award-winning craft bourbon. So, Kirk, if you don't find Steeple Ridge at your local Hy-Vee, check there first. Probably your best bet. Ask for it by name. That'd be funny if Kirk actually asked for it by name on Friday. Yeah. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. All right, Scott, let's get into a little bit of football talk here. Cade McNamara would be number one, Kirk said today, if the game was today or tomorrow. So it sounded like, from what I had heard, Brendan had the better scrimmage on Saturday, but Cade had the better week. So I think if in case of a tie goes to Cade in this case because he's got the experience. And I think Kirk almost needs him to succeed given what they've invested in him. So he's going to probably get the first crack, right?
No question. I think this is a situation where he's not ride or die with him, but he's ride or owie with him, and that's, this first game, it's his, and, maybe take it week by week, see how it goes. But, if he's what he was, the day we got to see him, then you have to pull him. I mean, you just cannot let that go on and let Brendan Sullivan, who's got 2 years instead of 1, let him just go ahead and take that. But yeah, I think, he's got to make a call. I mean, if the season started in 3 weeks, maybe he wouldn't make the call now, but I don't know. If there is one positive, I'll say this, that there's one clear advantage that Cade McNamara has over Brendan Sullivan right now is he does have more equity with his teammates because he's been there longer, and they have responded to him and his leadership. And with the head coach there, that is important because if there's some sort of, let's say that they're on the field and the play call is just not coming in, then Cade McNamara can get all the trains running on time. And that is important. Or if there's just something that you need that his leadership will come through, I will give him that plus. And maybe that's important. And going into the first game without your head coach, that is important.
Yeah, not a surprise that Kirk would defer to McNamara, but he did say today that both guys had improved. We'll take him at his word. Mm-hmm. You asked a good question about Cade on his Kids Day and how he's improved. One thing that Kirk said toward the end of the presser was the offense as a whole has looked better to him, and he didn't want to get too optimistic. I tweeted that quote right before he went live here from Kirk. I'll try to read it. Here it is. He said, normally I'm not very optimistic in front of you guys, but I actually think we're starting to click a little bit and push past camp mode. We're seeing cleaner execution. Now, the bar is low. We know that, Scott. But I guess you have to feel a little encouraged there that, this Leicester offense is clicking a little bit with these guys. Obviously, we both think the run game is going to be improved. The offensive line should be improved. The pass game is where they're going to have to catch up. So that does sound somewhat encouraging. I don't know. Have you heard any rumblings or anything, or what are your thoughts on kind of where things stand there?
The two position groups that we're concerned about and will be probably all year is quarterback and receiver, and pretty much everything that I've heard, and it's only been in bits and pieces, has been inconsistent at quarterback and inexperienced at receiver. They like the talent in the receiver. It's just got a long way to go, and then quarterback just has to get better. Outside of that, the offensive line, it's got a chance to be pretty good. And with Kirk, there are things that he says that you just kind of take, and that's a good point that you mentioned, because my ears perk up when I hear something like that. He won't outright say they're phenomenal or they're spectacular like the men's basketball coach at Iowa says. He's more of a very subtle and adds a little bit of flavor. one thing that came to mind to me early, and this was like '07, I think it was. He was talking about the offensive line, and it was struggling. It was giving up sacks left and right to Jake Christensen. But he said something like, "Yeah, but I think we can work with these guys." And then you just kind of go, "Okay, you got it." And then then you start to look at who they have, and it's Brian Bulaga, and it's Julian Vandervelde, and it's Kyle Callaway. I mean, guys that they were young, but they had a lot of growth. But then they ended up in the NFL, and I think Kirk kind of packages those flowers. They you think they're dandelions, but then all of a sudden they're daisies.
Yeah. Good point. That'll be the most fun part of week 1 to me, is seeing that offense on the field, seeing what it can do, seeing if the run game can pop some long runs, and obviously seeing what the pass game can do. One name that I've heard a lot about and is Reese Vanderzee, and he was a true freshman that flashed a little bit on Kids Day, enough where it's like, oh, he's running a few reps at the ones. Like, that's interesting. And we know Caleb Brown is out week 1. Seth Anderson's been slowed by injury. Dayton Howard slowed by injury. So opportunity there for a guy like Reese Vanderzee, a true freshman. Man, Northwest Iowa, man, they just keep churning them like quick too. Zach Lutmer, Reese Vanderzee. Just stay in Northwest Iowa. I mean, good grief. You could get a whole starting lineup for a Big Ten team practically there. It's crazy. But hey, that's a name to watch. Jacob Gill, Caden Weechin sounded like he had a big scrimmage the other day. I mean, I would expect between those three and probably Anderson to get some time, the most time probably in the opener, and Jarrett Bowie as well. So there's a lot of names at receiver, but Reese Vanderzee, that's my little breadcrumb here to watch in week 1.
Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. I do think right now that what we're going to see at receiver, Chad, is you're going to just see, awesomeness mixed with inconsistency, and mixed with somebody's going to be out there and you're like, why are they out there? They make a play and then they don't make a play. And you're like, what the hell? Where did they go? But, Gill has been the one that everybody seems to talk about. And, I remember talking to Mason Richmond about him, and he's just, flowing with praise because of the way he blocks. And, they notice that. But I mean, it's work ethic's contagious. And if you put forth the effort and you execute, then people will do that. I think Weejan's going to be a nice player. Vanderzee, yeah, he's different. You talk about Northwest Iowa, Chad. I mean, they got to go through Ames to get to Iowa City. And it's actually closer to Minneapolis than it is Iowa City, and probably Lincoln. But yet Iowa has a pipeline from there, Cooper DeJean, Lutmer now, and Vanderzee, and the list. I mean, their list goes way, way, way on. And that's one of the most under-recruited areas in this part of the world. And if they don't come here, they usually go to like South Dakota State or someplace, and they thrive. You can take a lot of South Dakota State and North Dakota State kids and turn out a pretty decent team.
Well, we appreciate you all joining this live show. We're going to stick with you a few more minutes here. Depth chart comes out Monday, Scott. Not a ton of mystery probably, but starting cornerback will be one of the interesting things that comes out. What do you expect there opposite Jamari Harris?
I think it'll be Nestor, but I like what I've heard. I like what I heard from Phil the other day and Kirk, although I'll be honest with you, when it was non-quarterback, non-suspension stuff, it just was kind of a blur to me. I got to go back and listen to it. And as a segue, this is a bad segue. So tell me about what has happened to you since this press conference. You wrote your column. You did a Hawk Central radio show. You were on KXNO. You're tweeting quotes, and then you still beat me to the set here. And I mean, holy cow! What got into you? I mean, did you go to game day before this, and then got your shot, and then take a shot of bourbon, and away we go? Oh my God!
No, our Hawk Central show was before the press conference. We did an instant reaction pod. So I actually had plenty of time. And my kids, I think I told you, my kids came with me to Iowa City to visit Grandma and Grandpa. So they're upstairs getting some dinner before you hit the road. They got their first day of school tomorrow, so I even went outside and played with them for like a couple minutes before we got. But to answer my own question, I'm going to say TJ Hall is going to be your starter. That's my prediction. We saw him start at Kids Day, but it seems like they feel pretty good there at corner. Kirk did say today that they feel good about 7 on the D line. So Llewellyn, Allen, and Pittman as the depth pieces there behind Herkett, Craig, Graves, and Black. So I feel good about 7 there. Honestly, I think they can get by with 7 as long as Graves and Black are healthy. Maybe you mix in Deontay Craig on the inside on third downs and, let your D tackles rest in that way. So,
well, this is the type of game that you empty the clip. You start throwing Will Hubert in there, Luke Gaffney, Jeff Bowie, Kenny Merriweather. You get them out on the field, get them some experience, because maybe you'll see something different. Maybe it's not that they showed you something that you weren't prepared for, but maybe it's like, wow, that lesson's finally starting to click in for this guy, and he's playing well, because you're going to need that. This is the type of game where if you can get to the fourth quarter and you're up, legitimately by 5 touchdowns, if you can get those guys some reps out there, then that's going to come to help you out.
Well, it is a school night for my kids, and I got a 2.5-hour drive home almost. So if you're good, I'm going to let's close it up, Scott.
Okay. Sounds good, Chad. Enjoy the drive back to Adel, and I'll get to bed because I certainly didn't do that.
I got to do some fantasy football research. I got a big draft on Saturday, and I'm way behind, and I can't just take Bears. So,
well, I wouldn't do that yet. Next year, do that. But we have a fantasy football guide at the Athletic, and so
I use it. It's good. It's great.
Okay, because I have one here. I got it free in the mail, so all I had to do is sign up for it, and I got that one. And we have a Caitlin Clark book, so that's coming out too.
Perfect. Well, for Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Scott and I will be back with you next week. It'll be a game week. We'll hit you up Thursday morning here on Legends and Listeners. As always, from the Channel Seed Studios and only on the Iowa Everywhere Network.